Hello, friends, and welcome to the Atlantic Front with the Jakeman. I'm your host, the Jakeman, and today we're diving into some exciting weather updates that you won't want to miss. Let's get started. Well, right away, you can see that we have weather that is already affecting and going to be affecting the Atlantic Front. So those of you that are new to the channel, the majority of what we're going to be focusing on is this whole area. So I'll go ahead and give you a little bit of a plot here. This whole area all along this zone here is what's considered all the way up to Maine down into Florida. That's what's considered the Atlantic Front. So just a quick little rundown on what this channel is going to provide you. That does not mean we're not going west of the Mississippi. That's where a lot of the weather comes from. That's where a lot of our energy stems from. So what we have is a pretty impressive system for February 15th, and you're going to be seeing this system going into the greater mid-Atlantic. You're going to see this turn into more of a snowstorm up there north of Washington into Harrisburg. Pittsburgh stays rain for the majority of this, but we'll see where that temperature line comes in so you can really get a good glean on what's going on. But for the most part, I'm going to use this as a template here for us. So what we have here is a large cold front that looks like this. And we have a warm front that looks like this. So when I show you the winds, you're going to see some other things too. But in the middle of all this is where the trouble is. And that's where that line of storms is coming through. So you're seeing a large push of energy coming down out of the north, much like we did a few weeks back with that polar vortex. Same principles, same dynamics, except for a lot of the southern energy and the southern moisture is coming out, and it's making its push into the area, which it always becomes very interesting when it comes to the southern states. North Carolina, Virginia, South Carolina, Georgia, all of those are in a very delicate position if you want to see any type of wintry precipitation. Once this storm moves out, you then see this polar vortex type, and that's what we're going to be discussing now. This line of storms is going to be affecting the mid-Atlantic, but it's going to be in the AM. So you're seeing between about 5 a.m. to 10 a.m., and it's coming down into a much more concise time frame. So we're thinking around between 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. Eastern, obviously. And that's when that's going to be coming in and affecting us. There is going to be some pretty heavy winds, but fortunately, the Appalachians are sitting right there, and they tend to move a lot of that really dynamic, dangerous wind shear, and it really blocks it for the mid-Atlantic. So you see the southeast right in here. So along this line, if you can really kind of think about it like this, that's really, it's a lot of this is affected, and it tries to push at the Appalachians, but they just can't. So we are going to be getting a pretty good storm tomorrow morning in this region. So make sure and stay by your phone. It's probably going to be an early morning, but the wind will continue through the day. So you're going to want to stay weather aware. Now let's talk about what is coming next week. Let's get to the GFS Euro and the Canadian right now. First one up, the GFS. So we are in the current run, and that is the 6 hour. So as you can see, the more dynamic picture here is showing what we just talked about on the live radar. So you're going to see some uniformity, because what's happening next week and what's happening now, you're seeing a lot of agreement from all the models. So when you take a look and see at the GFS, right now you see that this is a pretty good storm, and it starts into the run. But as you can see, notice that the yellows and the reds immediately go away. That's the impact of hitting the Appalachian Mountains. So you're seeing a lot of the severity that is being represented there starting to get chopped up almost immediately. Does that mean it's going to be not windy? Does that mean it's not going to have some sort of a punch? Absolutely not. But it is not as bad as it is in the plains. And when you see all those severe tornadoes, and this storm has been showing some wind shear with some hook clouds that can form into those tornadoes. We'll have to wait till tomorrow to see if those actually did come to fruition. So as you see, the GFS comes through, but pretty quickly it rebounds. Now the mountains, of course, are going to be getting a lot of this area. This right in that zone is going to be getting a lot of that backtrack storm. So that snow comes in, and once that snow comes in, it just settles into the top of the Appalachians. Boone, Jefferson City, and Watauga County, Avery County, all of those areas. So as you can see, as we continue through the GFS, we're now into the 17th. So we're a couple of days out. So you can see our friend starting to form here. All right. So it starts to come in. So a lot of the precipitations in Texas, but also in Oklahoma, gets a pretty good snowstorm. And as it did before, of course, that polar vortex was so far down that a lot of those same areas that that got that, the Louisianas and the Pensacola's and Panama cities and all of the panhandle of Florida getting record-breaking snow. It's not obviously that cold air is not coming down far enough. So, but we are going to see a pretty good push down towards into the southeast. So the GFS then jumps from right in here from about February 19th. So it's hitting the mountains and the precipitation is coming in and it settles in. So the runs that are coming through are going to be a little bit more dynamic. So what we're going to do is, this is the 0 run. I'm going to go back into the 18Z and then see what that looks like. So if you can, this is a more detailed run. You get more, as you can see, it gets more rather than the jumps. So the only reason why I'm showing you this is because a lot of it hasn't changed except for 12-hour jump, you see a 6-hour jump. So we appreciate that from the GFS, but of course that doesn't help us when we're being so precise. So just a few hours ago, this is what the GFS had. So you can see most of this is sitting right on that line. So you can see the line. Let's see if I can paint it for you here. This line does this, and it always does this and splits the southeast. So you see North Carolina, South Carolina, and all of these areas where I'm just plugging in these pink dots, they're all going to get some level of wintry precipitation, whether that be rain, freezing rain, sleet, or snow. All these are going to be in play. And that is pretty typical for the southern states. Yes, there is a line. Yes, there's a lot of different thoughts on where that line is, but honestly, they always call it what's called the I-85 corridor. Down here, it's the I-85 corridor. So this is 95 that runs like this, and that splits a lot. But then 85 comes in and does something like this. So you have 40 that does that, a Highway 40. And then you have 85 that blends off, that kind of runs off like this. So it does that. So there's really the I-40 corridor is going to be more of our indicator. But the I-85 always comes into play because the way the storm runs. So you're seeing a lot of that. So the way I see it, looks like Charlotte, looks like, I'd say greater South Carolina, greater upstate of South Carolina. Then it dives down and it stays down in that Charlotte area, and we pick up much more sleet and also some snow. So we're going to see some snow out of this. It just depends on if that snow line does come down. So let's take a look at the Euro. I want to show you the current Euro. The Euro is thinking that this storm that we're currently dealing with right now is going to end up being pretty severe. You can see the line, and it looks like the mountains start to take it apart slightly. You can see how it splits, but it does stay relatively severe as far as the Euro is concerned. But a much thinner line, so you're going to see that come in, whereas the GFS had a larger storm, but the reds and yellows that you see are more dynamic, and they hold their formation while it goes over the southeast. But that's just the current storm. But I wanted to show you the difference in the models and how they're tracking severity. So the GFS thought this was going to be a more of a rain event as far as tomorrow, and the Euro thinks it's more of a severe storm. So let's jump back in and see when the next system forms. That system comes in, so now we're at February 18th. So here it is. North Texas into Oklahoma, into Missouri, and basically into the Great Plains get a nice big blob. Tennessee and the upstate of Mississippi and Alabama. Looks like Georgia doesn't get as much this time, maybe perhaps on the back end, just a little bit in that northern Georgia area. And then you see right around the beginning of February 19th. So the Euro has this model, or its model is showing that it comes in a lot earlier than the GFS does with a lot more substance. So you see that North Carolina is already getting right around Wednesday, February 19th. You're seeing a good mix of freezing rain and sleet and snow in that snow line we're talking. Then it switches almost completely over into snow, freezing rain, and sleet. And then it stays around through the February the 19th, all the way through that day, sticks around into February 20th. It's still it looks like Charlotte goes into snow, and it looks like Raleigh, and I would say east of Albemarle and the upstate of South Carolina, and it looks like it even gets down into Chester, maybe even North Columbia. So, and it does stay in the Carolinas for a good amount of time. The back end of the storm produces a lot of snow for the mountains as well. So you can see that not only did this storm have a lot more energy in as far as the Euro was concerned, but it also stuck around a lot longer as well. So that's an interesting difference between the Euro and the GFS. Let's see what the Canadians doing. These are the last few days that we're going to be looking at as far as the temperature anomaly. And what this is showing is that distinctive line, or that disparate line that shows the warmer air and the cooler air. But what happens is you can have a really dynamic line that shows exactly what we're talking about when the weather changes. So you're talking about a really large visual that we can see this. So this is going to be the EPS. So as it comes in, we're now into the February 14th area. So now let's get to the 15th. So we are now at the 15th. So you can see that today was a lot warmer than normal. But watch what happens very, very quickly. You see the 15th almost with this diving cold air that blasts right through the middle. That's called a polar vortex. That is the dipping cold air out of Canada that is pushing all the way down. So you're seeing the anomalies. You're seeing -7, -8, -12, -16 different degrees as far as what was considered normal if they're using the 1981 to 2010 climatology. So it's using a pretty good sample as far as finding out how much the difference is between the normal and how far they're actually going, how far down the entire United States is going to be off of its normal pace. So right around about the 17th, so 2 days from now, you start seeing this really, really cold air push, and it settles in and sets in. So when you have a southern storm, you need your state or your area to be cold. Otherwise, the snow can fall, but it doesn't stick. So it's going to be cold. Monday, the 17th, is going to be cold. It bounces back slightly, but not much. Comes into February 18th, and another round blasts down into that area. And you can see there's just a small push of warm air tends to look what we're seeing here. See, we're seeing the line. See how everything goes? This is that line that you can see. You can see this line, and it splits Charlotte in half. Look at that. So it goes just north of Columbia, just past Atlanta. So the line is going to be just like that. And it's right around February 19th. So that is a very definition of a temperature anomaly that makes it so difficult for us, the enthusiasts, and the weather people to get it right when you're talking about forecasting southern storms. But I wanted to show you guys this because the cold air is there. Is it going to stick around? Notice that line stays right on Charlotte and it dips. So February 20th, it does dip down just below, which is why you're seeing the Euro GFS and the Canadian saying there is possibility, because we're going to be able to see the moisture and the precipitation coming into fruition, seeing it form, so we can gather that information. But where is that line of freezing versus not freezing? So it looks like February 20th might be our day. The Canadian also agrees with the GFS and the Euro with the current storm that we're in, but it follows a lot more into the GFS where the storm loses its punch and becomes a big rainmaker, so it's not as severe as the Euro thought. So there is that line, of course, that is quite distinctive and dynamic, and it's going to be a rainmaker bringing thunderstorms and wind. But what's behind it is what is most interesting because of the wind that's going to stick around. Of course, we're going to see some sunshine right afterwards, but the wind is going to be blowing around 20 to 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts in the North and South Carolina areas. So all the way up the line as far as the mid-Atlantic and the Southeast. So it is going to be an effector. It's going to shoot straight up into the Pennsylvania and upstate New York. And it looks like that sleet and freezing rain and ice, it could just be an absolute mess in some of the Philadelphia areas and a lot of those areas that come into some of the larger cities as well. So, but it looks like the majority of that's going to be a rain event for this one. That one's tomorrow. So let's see, the Canadian ends up having the system be created right around the same time, a little bit behind the Euro, just ahead of the GFS slightly. Whereas Wednesday, February 19th, you then see most of North Carolina, I'd say north of Statesville into the foothills, probably just west of Shelby, and then you see almost this line right here, or this pocket, and we always see these pockets right here. I'll show you this pocket because this is where it always is the most interesting. See that white area? That is where you don't. So you see almost this wraparound snow. This wraparound that says because this energy is so far down, but it's hard, it's difficult to push that much southern air and southern exposure that's trying to push its way up. So next, what they're saying next is that it's coming in, but it's going to settle in, and then it sets more in the north. And then as the run continued, it then settled out and did show that there was going to be a snow event that was sitting right on that line. It looks like the Charlotte area south. Again, I know I'm referencing Charlotte. I do live in the area, but that is where the line is. It legitimately is on the line. We have been in storms where 10 miles north of Charlotte can get 6 inches of snow, and 10 miles south of Charlotte can get a dust. So it really is the line that, or it's this distinguished line that separates the amount of snow that can fall, and it is truly amazing. So, but it does say that it comes back in the back end, but here's where it's most interesting, because the Thursday, February 20th, this one says that this wraparound, this ends up pushing towards down into it. So that cold blast of air with that wraparound energy then ends up continuing to push down in there. So with the Canadian, they've even said that now there's a second chance. So that first blast could be snow, freezing rain, sleet, the whole gamut. And then, but the back end would be in a completely snow event. So you don't really know what you're getting with this, but it seems to me that the uniformity has really come together. So that's really what we've got here today, folks, is the amazing, amazing storm that's going to be coming in. We haven't had this much snow opportunity in a really long time. It seems like winter is coming, and it's going to stick around. So all you snow lovers, this is going to be there for you next week. Thank you so much for sticking around, and watching the Atlantic front with the Jakeman. Like and subscribe. Come on back. We'll do it again real soon.